KwaZulu-Natal Police Commissioner Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi says he can prove that the arrest of crime intelligence head Dumisani Khumalo was aimed at derailing a criminal investigation here in the province of Gauteng. He also alleges that the Investigating Directorate Against Corruption, this is IDAC, has been infiltrated by criminal elements working with syndicates. Let's break it all down with security analyst Eldred de Klerk. Eldred, good morning. Welcome to the program as always.
Morning, Iman.
And I'm just wondering, when you're watching those developments in Parliament yesterday, I mean, what do you corral? What do you lasso? Because there was just so much that was said there. Let's just maybe start with this one. We know that Diane Kohler-Barnard, MP, they're going to continue with questioning around her today and whether the calls for her recusal will go anywhere. But this relates to what Mkhwanazi took, quite some exception to, what he described as the disclosing of classified crime intelligence information. She's defended herself on this one, but the point being that he said that if those who have been named or implicated or called out essentially were to give their evidence, what they would say would basically make the country burn. And you kind of sit up in your chair and really take notice when someone of his caliber says something like that. What did you think?
Well, it's more than interesting and yet very disturbing. And he's right. There's lots of state secrets. There are things that are known about people and their connections. And information, as you also point out, has been collected both covertly and irregularly at times. Yet the information you stumble upon or you get by irregular means leads you down an investigation path. So what we saw yesterday was, in fact, we started to see how a cop thinks, how they think, how they plan, how they discern, how they look at stuff that happens and how they make connections. And then they pursue information that will lead them either to corroborate their suspicions or actually say, no, they need to go in another direction. And it's critical that all members of the committee understand their role, both as parliamentarians and as public representatives, but also as members of the committee itself. Because ultimately what they're busy with is they need to consider that the fate and the state of our criminal justice system is a threat to national security.
And that's concerning in and of itself. I just wanted to go back and look at, so we're looking at both these. We're looking at the ad hoc committee and we're looking at the Nhlanhla Commission. First of all, there was a lot of criticism, is this a duplication of work? But what's so interesting is what the Lieutenant General said to the Nhlanhla Commission about Nathi Mthethwa, who was at one time our police minister, and what he told the ad hoc committee about Nathi Mthethwa. Now, what he told the Nhlanhla Commission was related to his time as a police minister, and insofar as the issues related to one Richard Mdluli. But let's talk then about what he told the committee yesterday insofar as Nathi Mthethwa's home and the perimeter fence that is going to be in our faces for the next couple of days because the ambassador, of course, is now deceased. There's going to be memorial services and funerals. People are visiting that home. And he said when you consider that perimeter fence, that money, he claims, came out of the crime intelligence slush fund and basically weaving this tale of patronage that if, the crime intelligence guys could get Nathi Mthethwa favors or do things for him, then he would be silenced on other issues and calling them out. I mean, I'm just really dramatically paraphrasing what he has said. But that is concerning. So I would love for you to just stack up what he told Nhlanhla and the ad hoc committee about Nathi Mthethwa. But the bigger theme of buying currency and favor, this is how they do their work.
Absolutely. That is what the slush fund or the secret fund is for. You got to look towards compromising or making somebody complicit. Back in the day, they used to say that intelligence people say things like, well, I can't tell you what I do because then I will have to kill you. No, those days have, in fact, that's a small part of what they do. What they really want to do is that you dead can't do them any favors. What they want to do is compromise you. And they use a number of measures and ways to perhaps to do that. They can also justify expenditure like you do on fencing to say that that's a security measure. It's a legitimate upgrade to a critical asset of the state, namely a public representative. And it also makes their job a little easier if they create something called, like what we call in crime prevention, a perimeter fence that becomes something as what we say is a target hardening activity. So you create a barrier or deterrent to ensure that somebody is safer. The underlying point, Iman, as you rightfully say, this is about getting currency and being able to get somebody to do favors for you. That essentially is how crime intelligence works.
I mean, to say what he said exactly, he said it's a ploy to take control of the executive, which is something we are so concerned with. And in fact, what has flavored essentially or catalyzed the Nhlanhla Commission of Inquiry in terms of overreach when it came to Minister Senzo Mkhwanazi and the instructions around the disbanding of the PKTT. He also mentions Mkhwanazi in that same vein and suggesting a similar thing, that there was almost, in a sense, him being ransomed to the will of those in crime intelligence who wanted Mkhwanazi to do their bidding. And I also got the sense, and I don't know if I'm reading this wrong, and please clarify me if I am, that it almost felt as if he was saying, well, maybe Mkhwanazi was swept along, not so much, a willing partner in all of this, but somebody who had been kind of swept along.
Absolutely. He seems to suggest that the minister, and now the minister on special leave, was caught up in pursuing the interest of others. That includes signing a letter that he may have been reluctant to sign, which suggests that, and the only person, or the only two people who can tell us this is the Minister Chief of Staff, to tell us what the whole hullabaloo about the letter going backwards and forwards between whom and who else was involved in drafting that letter. And the minister himself that says that he did not, or he can come and explain that he signed this letter out of free will, and without receiving the relevant information for him to be able to judge and to call and to issue a directive that the PKTT should actually be closed down, or that crime intelligence members should not be appointed and that whole process be halted. That to Mkhwanazi himself seemed irregular, it seemed suspicious, and he wanted to let the minister know that that might be potentially be unlawful. And somewhere along that way, it fell on deaf ears, and it led him to make the decisions he did further down the line.
Which have had serious or created some, seismic responses or repercussions in the country in terms of the questions that we have and what the motives might be. And I'm invoking a word that the National Police Commissioner, Fani Masemola, invoked in his testimony at the Nhlanhla Commission of Inquiry, insofar as him trying to delay or employ delaying tactics with regard to the disbanding of the PKTT. You know, Eldred, we were sitting side by side at the Bridget Mabandla Justice College listening to testimony from those who came to testify. What's your sense of the work of the ad hoc committee in day one versus, the 8 days of Nhlanhla that we've had so far in terms of the robustness of the evidence given?
Well, we always knew that the ad hoc committee is going to be a very different beast. It's going to be an opportunity because you're going to be cross-examined in real time. Your own story is going to be tested, and the veracity of what you're saying is going to be questioned. The members today will have an opportunity to do their bit, and some of them will have, they'll have 30 minutes each to actually go into what's been shared and what's been said. And the members were very diligent yesterday. They definitely had their oats in the morning. They were awake. They were there, and they were and they were concerned because the ad hoc committee and they got into the meat of the matter a lot sooner than Nhlanhla. That took the time to set it up, lay the foundations. The ad hoc committee has no time to do that. They have to get to the critical questions. One, is this a threat to national security? Secondly, was there executive overreach? Thirdly, what are the legislation gaps? Review parliamentary processes and safeguards, and look at the conduct of a public representative and a member of parliament with public servants and others outside of parliament. And then the other thing they have to look at is what Mkhwanazi got into was how are public funds being spent. And he singled out crime intelligence and its covert funds or its slush funds or its secret funds, call it what you like. All of those are very sexy names, and it you know, raises things about movies and black bags and drops, money drops. So the ad hoc committee has to get into what we know the meat and potatoes of things, and they got to it a lot quicker than Nhlanhla.
Well, maybe it makes my next question moot then, because I was going to ask you how they acquitted themselves. There was some criticism at the beginning about the debating around whether, you know, what he presented to Nhlanhla could be used here. There was that clash around documentation, the original statement, and so on. And so it seemed as if, you know, there were these unnecessary delays that could have been, resolved earlier on. But I want to go to the bigger question around the performance of our MPs in general. We all know quite well now that he said, he kind of raised the alarm earlier this year. We could have had a months-long head start into getting into the work that we're actually seeing unfolding before our very eyes now, months ago. But he also had said something interesting about MPs not asking the right questions in the right fora when it comes to the activities of crime intelligence. What's your observation?
Absolutely, and it seems like the MPs took that at heart. I mean, yesterday we saw, as I said, a cop's cop, and how we got to see how a police officer think, and we also got to see how Parliament operates and how ad hoc committees can be as robust. We saw the evidence leader, and as you said, we had a shaky start, and the MPs put it straight. They were very clear that they have a mandate, they have certain responsibilities, and they might have been asleep at the wheel, as we have said before. They seem determined to firstly acknowledge that there was missed opportunities, and that they now need to proceed to ensure, or more robustly, and to ensure that they don't miss this opportunity, and that they have a responsibility both to Parliament and to the country and to themselves to ensure that this process yields results. So I felt very good. And the fact that the MP sat there without moving till after 11 last night showed that they have hopefully the stamina and the determination. And hopefully today they'll begin to ask what he considers the right questions, because I think he laid the foundation and he gave them the areas of inquiry which they now can pursue.